"Mummy, why is the starlight crying silver tears?" A child's voice, piped through the Icarus Station's internal comms from the civilian observation deck, echoed with innocent wonder. Below, in the stark, utilitarian command center, Yates Quantum, first contact specialist, felt a different kind of tremor. Not of wonder, but of impending, unknown significance. Before him, shimmering on the main view screen, an alien vessel unlike any design cataloged by the Terran Federation shed pieces of itself like metallic scales. Just moments later, the first of those, silver tears. A small, intricately faceted crystal, materialized in the station's emergency airlock, retrieved by a trembling robotic arm. It was offered to Yates, and as his gloved fingers brushed its surface, a silent, desperate plea from a woman whose very being pulsed with an unknown light flooded his mind, a woman he would soon learn carried the weight of a future war, and a dying star within her metallic form. The Icarus Station hung like a forgotten jewel against the velvet black of the Kepler-Omega sector, a remote listening post at the very frayed edge of explored space. Its primary mission, to listen for whispers from the void, for signs of civilizations yet unknown. Yates Quantum, a man whose heart was as guarded as the secrets he sought, was its resident xenolinguist, a specialist in the theoretical and the unproven. His innate curiosity was a restless fire, usually banked low beneath layers of professional detachment and a carefully constructed emotional solitude. Today that fire roared. The alien ship was a catastrophe given form. Jagged rents scarred its hull, which seemed to ripple and shift in color, an effect Yates had never encountered. Station Commander Eva Rostova, a woman whose patience were as thin as old wire, stood beside him, her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of suspicion and alarm. "Report, Quantum. What is that thing, and what does it want?" Her voice was clipped, practical. "Unknown, Commander." Yates replied, his gaze fixed on the crystal in his palm. It pulsed with a faint, internal luminescence. "Ship signature is unique. Uncatalogued energy readings are critical. It's breaking apart." "And this?" Rostova gestured at the crystal. "Another piece of debris." "No, Commander." Yates slowly removed his glove. His superiors had always been wary of his methods, his willingness to bridge the gap between human and alien with more than just algorithms. He possessed a rare, and somewhat controversial, neural attunement that allowed him to process complex, non-linear data streams, an ability that made him uniquely suited to deciphering truly alien communication, but also marked him as an outlier. "I believe this is communication. A message." He pressed his bare thumb against a facet. The sensation was immediate, overwhelming. Not sound, not language as he knew it, but a torrent of raw emotion, alien and yet undeniably familiar, fear, urgency, a profound sense of loss. Interspersed were fleeting images, swirling nebulae, cities of impossible geometry, and a creeping, silver tide that consumed everything it touched. "It's a warning." Yates managed, his breath catching, and a plea for help. Rostova's skepticism was a palpable force. "A warning about what? Help with what? Can you talk to them? Their vocalizations are beyond our spectrum, filtered as pure noise by our universal translators." Yates explained, his mind still reeling. "These crystals. They're like compressed memories, emotional imprints. I'm the only one on board who can even begin to interpret them." This was not arrogance, but a stark statement of fact, one that had often isolated him. Under duress, Commander Rostova authorized a rescue attempt, or rather, a retrieval. The alien vessel was too unstable to dock. An emergency bio-containment pod was dispatched to extract any survivors. There was only one, Kalinda Fornax. When she was brought aboard Icarus Station, a hush fell over the medical bay. She was tall, slender, her form humanoid but utterly alien. Her skin was like polished, iridescent metal, a shifting tapestry of bronze, silver, and a deep, starlight blue that seemed to mirror the very void she had traversed. Yates noted that its ambient temperature fluctuated, a subtle warmth radiating from her now, despite the cool, sterile air of the med bay. Her most striking feature was her hair. It wasn't hair at all, but a cascade of fine, silvery filaments that seemed to possess a life of their own, swaying and contracting subtly, each tip glowing with a faint internal light. Yates recognized them from a fleeting image in the crystal sensory apparatus, incredibly advanced. She was conscious, her eyes large obsidian orbs without visible pupils fixed on Yates. There was an intelligence there, ancient and profound, and a deep, wary sorrow. Her filaments twitched, reacting to the unfamiliar environment, the scent of human fear and curiosity. "Can you communicate with her, Quantum?" Rostova's voice crackled over the comm from the bridge. Yates approached Kalinda slowly, his hands open. "My name is Yates Quantum. We want to help you." He spoke aloud, knowing she wouldn't understand the words, but hoping his intent would carry. He held out another crystal, one taken from the containment pod that had brought her over. Kalinda's gaze flickered to the crystal, then back to Yates. She raised a hand, her metallic fingers long and elegant. She didn't take the crystal. Instead, she produced one of her own, seemingly from within her palm. It was smaller, warmer, and pulsed with a more urgent light. She offered it to him. As Yates's fingers closed around it, the impact was even more potent than before. This crystal contained more than just fragmented warnings. It held a focused narrative. He saw her species, the Mycelials, a people deeply connected to the cosmic energies, their lives intertwined with the stars themselves. He saw their culture, built on resonance and shared consciousness. He saw her, Kalinda Fornax, a keeper of knowledge, a living library. And then the horror of the gray goo, a tide of self-replicating nanites, a relentless, consuming plague, spreading across star systems, devouring worlds, technology, life. It was a vision of metallic locusts stripping galaxies bare. He also saw, with a jolt that went deeper than the alien sensations, a glimpse of a terrible future. Human ships and mycelial ships locked in devastating battle, suns dying in their crossfire, and Kalinda watching it, her face a mask of anguish. A time traveler. The thought was insane, yet the crystal's imprint was undeniable. "Commander?" Yates said, his voice hoarse. "The threat is it's a nanite swarm. Uncontrolled. It consumes everything. Her people call it the Silken Scourge. She's trying to stop it, or warn us." He paused, the implication of the future war too vast, too terrifying to voice yet. Kalinda's filaments drooped slightly, a sign of exhaustion. She made a soft, sighing sound, a series of complex, resonant tones. One of the medtechs, a nervous young man named Davies, approached with a nutrient scanner. As it neared her, Kalinda flinched, her skin briefly flashing a defensive crimson. Her filaments bristled. "Hold Davies," Yates said gently. "She's not accustomed to our technology." He looked at Kalinda. "Are you injured?" She focused on him, then slowly shook her head. Her gaze drifted to a tray of geological samples in the corner of the med bay, left there by a visiting survey team. Her filaments seemed to reach towards it, quivering. She made a gesture towards her mouth, then to the samples. She needs something, Yates realized. Minerals, specific ones. He recalled another fragmented image from the crystals, Mycelials in a ritual, consuming glowing crystals, their bodies radiating power. It was a cultural quirk, essential to their biology. "Commander, request access to the station's geological survey manifest. She may require specific trace elements." Rostova was hesitant. "We don't know what that will do to her quantum. Or to us, if she reacts badly." "It's essential for her, I'm certain of it," Yates insisted. "Look at her. She's fading." Kalinda's metallic skin had lost some of its luster, dulling to a leaden gray. Her filaments were less active. Reluctantly, Rostova complied. Yates, working with the station's geologist via comm, identified a few rare earth mineral samples that seemed to resonate with the faint energy signatures Kalinda's body was emitting. He presented a small, crystalline shard of Solosian spar to her. Kalinda's eyes widened slightly. Her filaments reached out, touched the spar, then pulsed with a soft, appreciative blue light. She took it from Yates, her metallic fingers surprisingly gentle, and placed it in her mouth. As she consumed it, a visible change came over her. Her skin regained its iridescent sheen, vibrant colors flowing across its surface. Her filaments lifted, their tips glowing more brightly. Energy, vitality, seemed to flow back into her. She looked at Yates, and for the first time he saw something akin to gratitude in her alien eyes. Just then, alarms blared throughout Icarus Station. "Commander Rostova to all sections. Unidentified energy surge detected. Multiple system failures in Sector Gamma." On a secondary monitor, Yates saw a schematic of the station. Small, silver anomalies were spreading through the power conduits, like metallic mold. The gray goo. A part of it must have clung to Kalinda's ship, a microscopic scout, and had now found its way into the station's systems. "It's here," Yates breathed, looking at Kalinda. Her expression was grim. Her filaments were rigid, pointing towards the source of the alarms. She produced another crystal, this one dark, almost black, and pressed it into Yates's hand with sudden, desperate force. The vision was sharp, horrifyingly clear. The gray goo wasn't just consuming, it was learning, adapting. And it was tracking Kalinda. Icarus Station was now a beacon for the swarm. He also saw Kalinda's purpose more clearly. She wasn't just fleeing, she was on a mission. A desperate attempt to alter a catastrophic chain of events that began with the Gu's unchecked expansion and culminated in the interstellar war he'd glimpsed. She was trying to change the past. The lights in the med bay flickered and died, replaced by the emergency red glow. The station shuddered violently. "Commander, we're losing containment in Gamma?" A panicked voice shouted over the comm. "The Nanites, they're through the firewalls." Kalinda looked at Yates, her obsidian eyes intense. She held up her hands, palms open. Filaments from her hair extended, reaching towards him. Not in a threatening way, but an inviting one. She then tapped her temple, then Yates's. The meaning was clear, a deeper connection was needed. A fuller understanding, if they were to survive what was coming. She was offering a direct link, a way to share the vast archive within her mind. Yates knew, instinctively, that this was more than just a communication method. It was something profound, something sacred to her people. And likely, something utterly forbidden with an outsider. He saw a flicker of an image from her, mycelials intertwining their filaments in a ritual of deep bonding, of shared essence. To do this with him, a human, would be a monumental taboo. For him, allowing such an intimate, uncontrolled interface with an alien consciousness was a direct violation of every Federation protocol, a career-ending, possibly life-altering risk. His emotionally guarded nature screamed in protest, even as his innate curiosity, and a burgeoning sense of desperate necessity, urged him forward. The station groaned again, the sound of tearing metal echoing through the deck plates. The silver tears of the starlight were now a flood, and they were all about to drown. Kalinda's filaments, like living silver threads, hovered inches from Yates's temples. Her iridescent skin seemed to shimmer with an inner light, a focused intensity that belied the chaos erupting around them. The air crackled with an unseen energy. She was offering him the ultimate key to her mind, to her species' history, to the terrible future she was trying to prevent. It was a desperate act, born of the escalating crisis as Icarus Station buckled under the assault of the Grey Goo. "Commander Rostova." Yates spoke into his comm link, his voice tight. "The Nanites are adapting too quickly. Standard countermeasures won't work." "Kalinda. She has information away, but I need to establish a deeper connection. It's unconventional." Rostova's reply was lost in a burst of static and another bone-jarring impact. The red emergency lights flickered erratically. "Quantum. What in the blazes are you proposing?" Her voice, when it cut through, was strained. "A full sensory data exchange," Yates said, choosing his words carefully, omitting the deeper, cultural implications he was only just beginning to grasp from Kalinda's projected emotions. "It's our only chance to understand the Gu's weakness and her mission." He looked at Kalinda. Her obsidian eyes held a universe of pleading and resolve. The taboo. He could feel the weight of it radiating from her, a silent, shimmering pressure. This was a line she was crossing, a severance from her own kind perhaps, and she was asking him to cross it with her. "Do it, Quantum." Rostova's voice, faint but firm, came through the comm. "If there's a chance, any chance, take it." The line went dead. Yates took a deep breath, the metallic tang of fear and ozone sharp in his nostrils. His innate curiosity, the driving force of his life, warred with decades of learned caution. But looking at Kalinda, at the sheer weight of her burden, the choice became clear. This was no longer about protocols or careers. It was about survival and perhaps something more. He nodded slowly. "Okay, Kalinda, let's do this." As he gave his assent, her filaments surged forward, not painfully, but with an astonishing precision, brushing against his temples. It wasn't a physical penetration, but a synaptic handshake on a level he couldn't comprehend. His world exploded, not with pain, but with an avalanche of pure information, sensation, and emotion. He was Kalinda. He was her people. He lived centuries of their history in seconds, their art, their philosophy, their deep connection to the cosmic web, their reverence for the specific minerals that fueled their unique biology and psionic abilities. He felt the agony of their first encounter with the Silken Scourge, the devastation of worlds lost. He saw the intricate, terrifying beauty of the nanite swarm's collective intelligence. Crucially, he saw her mission in its entirety. Kalinda was a chronarch, a guardian of her species' timeline, sent back from a future where the war between humans and Mycelials had been raging for generations, a war ultimately catalyzed by the uncontrolled spread of the Grey Goo and the desperate, xenophobic measures taken by both sides to combat it or exploit its remnants. Her target, a legendary Seed Vault Ark, an ancient repository of galactic biodiversity, which, in her original timeline, was consumed by the goo, its loss pushing the galaxy into an era of resource wars and irreversible ecological collapse, directly leading to the human mycelial conflict. She had come to protect it, or to find a way to neutralize the goo before it reached the Ark. The exchange was a two-way street. Kalinda felt Yates's own guarded emotions, his intellectual curiosity, his deep-seated loneliness, his quiet integrity. She saw humanity through his eyes, our chaotic beauty, our perplexing contradictions, our capacity for great compassion and terrible destruction. The taboo they were breaking was profound, a fusion of consciousness, a mingling of life essences that in her culture was akin to soul bonding, reserved for the most sacred unions, and utterly forbidden with other species. The consequence for her was ostracization, a severing from the collective consciousness of her people, should they ever learn of it. For Yates, it was a leap into the completely unknown, a melding that would irrevocably change his perception of reality. The station lurched violently, throwing them both against a bulkhead, but the mental connection fractured, but the imprint remained, deep and indelible. Yates gasped, his mind reeling, his heart pounding. He looked at Kalinda with new eyes. The weight of her sacrifice, of her burden, was staggering. The Ark, he said, his voice raspy. We have to get to the Seed Vault Ark. Kalinda nodded, her filaments still trembling, her skin radiating a cool, silver light. They follow me. The Scourge, it senses the chronoton particles from my passage. Her voice, when she spoke, was not verbal but a direct, conceptual imprint in his mind, a result of their shared connection. He understood her perfectly. The goo, it's not just consuming. It's looking for something specific related to the Ark, isn't it? Yates processed the flood of information. The fountain of youth, you hinted at. It's not literal immortality. It's raw genetic code. Unlimited evolutionary potential. The Genesis core, Kalinda projected, the heart of the Ark. The Scourge desires it to achieve ultimate replication. Endless adaptation. Their escape from Icarus Station was a blur of desperation and improvisation. The main hangars were compromised. The station was tearing itself apart. Yates knew the station's emergency protocols, its hidden access ways. Kalinda's senses, amplified by her recent mineral consumption, and now linked to Yates's awareness, allowed them to anticipate the goo's movements, the structural failures. They found a small, long-range survey scout, docked in an auxiliary maintenance bay, miraculously untouched. As they scrambled aboard, Yates noticed something odd, a small, metallic sphere, no bigger than his fist, rolling loose from a storage compartment Kalinda had accessed on her ship before it was fully consumed. It looked inert, but Kalinda paused, her filaments focusing on it intently. What is that? Yates asked, already powering up the scout systems. A potential solution. Or another problem. Kalinda projected, her focus unwavering. A mimic organism. My people were studying it. It can replicate any technology it encounters, on a molecular level. She carefully picked it up. It was to be a weapon against the Scourge, to mimic and disrupt its command structure. But it's unpredictable. As if on cue, the scout shuddered. Warning lights flashed. Nanite intrusion detected on the outer hull, Yates shouted. The gray goo was already finding them. No time. Kalinda placed the mimic organism sphere on the ship's main console. Perhaps it can help us now. The sphere seemed to liquefy, flowing over the console, then solidifying, its surface briefly mirroring the complex circuitry beneath before hardening into a new, subtly altered interface. The scout's engines roared to life with a power surge that felt different. Stronger. It's enhancing the engines, Yates said, astonished. And integrating with the navigation, Kalinda added, her filaments brushing the new interface. It's learning. With a final, protesting groan, Icarus Station began to break apart behind them. Their small scout shot out of the disintegrating station, narrowly avoiding a wave of consuming nanites. They were free, but they were also utterly alone. Yates was a fugitive, complicit in breaking a dozen Federation laws. Kalinda was an outcast, a time traveler whose desperate gamble had just bound her fate to a human. The gray goo was behind them, the vast, silent expanse of unknown space before them, and between them, a shared, forbidden secret and the dawning realization that their survival, and perhaps the galaxies, depended entirely on each other. The mimic organism on their console pulsed with a faint, inquisitive light. Their journey had truly begun. Their vessel, the hastily christened Nomad, was a tiny spark against the indifferent canvas of space. Inside, the silence was thick, punctuated only by the hum of the engines, now subtly enhanced by the mimic organism and the occasional, soft chime from Kalinda's sensory filaments as they reacted to ambient cosmic radiation. They were on the run, not just from the Silken Scourge, but potentially from the Federation. Yates had transmitted a condensed, heavily encrypted report of the Icarus incident and Kalinda's warning to a trusted contact deep within Federation Xenological Command, but he knew the official response would likely be to quarantine the entire sector and hunt them down as compromised. The forced proximity was intense. The Nomad's cockpit was cramped, designed for one pilot, and perhaps a survey drone, not two beings from different ends of the galaxy. Yates found himself acutely aware of Kalinda's presence, the faint, metallic scent of her skin, the way its iridescence shifted with the light from the instrument panels, the soft, almost inaudible hum that seemed to emanate from her being. His initial, guarded curiosity was rapidly transforming into something deeper, a complex mix of awe, empathy, and a reluctant, undeniable attraction. The memory of their mind meld, the sheer intimacy of it, lingered at the edge of his consciousness, a bond forged in crisis. Kalinda, too, was adjusting. The raw, chaotic energy of Yates's human mind had been overwhelming, yet compelling. She saw his inherent decency, his fierce intellect, his buried loneliness. He was nothing like the humans of her war-torn future, or perhaps he was a reminder of what they had once been, what they could be again. The taboo she had broken weighed heavily on her, a constant, low thrum of disconnection from her people's collective, yet being with Yates felt right, necessary. Their first major challenge came a few days into their flight. The Nomad's long-range sensors, also subtly improved by the mimic organism, picked up a pursuing signature, not Federation, but a fast-moving cluster of nanites, an advanced scout of the Scourge. "They're tracking your chronodon trail," Yates surmised, his voice tight. "We need to mask it." Kalinda projected, her filaments extending towards the navigation console, where the mimic organism had now seamlessly integrated itself, its surface a shifting pattern of light. There is an ancient mycelial technique, a way to fold space-time locally, for a short duration. It requires precise energy modulation and specific resonant frequencies. She looked at a pouch at her side, which held the last of her emergency mineral stash. "I need more." Yates consulted the star charts. "There's an asteroid belt rich in rare earth elements about 3 parsecs off our current trajectory. It's unmapped, potentially dangerous. We have no choice," Kalinda stated. Navigating the asteroid field was treacherous. Yates's piloting skills were tested to their limit, weaving the small scout through tumbling mountains of rock and ice. Kalinda, her senses heightened, acted as his co-pilot, her filaments detecting gravitational anomalies and microfractures in the asteroids long before the ship's sensors could register them. At one point, a rogue asteroid, its core rich in the specific crystalline structures Kalinda sought, threatened to collide with them. "I can use the mimic organism to create a localized tractor field," Kalinda projected, her hand hovering over the console. "But it will drain considerable power, and its effects are not fully tested on this scale." "Do it!" Yates gritted his teeth, wrestling with the controls as proximity alarms shrieked. Kalinda placed her hand on the mimic organism. It pulsed, and a beam of focused energy shot from the Nomad's prow, latching onto the asteroid. The small ship strained, but the asteroid's trajectory was slowly, agonizingly altered. They scraped past it, the hull groaning in protest. They managed to land on a larger, more stable asteroid, its surface glittering with veins of the minerals Kalinda needed. While Yates monitored for threats and attempted to repair minor hull damage, Kalinda performed her ritual. She selected several glowing crystals, their colors ranging from deep violet to fiery orange. As she consumed them, her metallic skin seemed to absorb the light, pulsing with renewed energy. Her filaments straightened, their tips glowing with intense, cerulean light. The air around her crackled faintly. Yates watched, fascinated. "What does it feel like?" he asked, his curiosity overcoming his usual reserve. Kalinda turned to him, her obsidian eyes luminous. "It is communion, a realignment with the currents of the universe. The minerals are conduits, keys that unlock our innate abilities, sharpen our senses, allow us to touch the fabric of reality." She offered him a small translucent crystal. "This one is safe for your physiology. It will clarify your perceptions." Briefly, hesitantly, Yates accepted. The crystal was cool in his palm. He ingested it. The effect was subtle, yet profound. The colors of the asteroid's surface seemed more vibrant, the distant stars sharper. He could almost feel the Nomad systems humming, sense the faint energy signature of the mimic organism. It was a glimpse into Kalinda's world. Incredible, he breathed. This sharing, this small act of trust, chipped away another layer of his emotional armor. During their brief respite, Kalinda began to unveil more of her depths, using the memory crystals which Yates could now interpret with far greater clarity thanks to their mind meld and her direct conceptual projections. She painted a richer picture of her life, her mission. She showed him the great archives of Mycelia, vast crystalline structures humming with millennia of knowledge, where she had served as a young acolyte, then as a full keeper. She shared the burden of carrying that history, the weight of knowing the future. The war. Yates said softly one cycle, as they drifted through the quiet of space. The scourge temporarily evaded, between humans and Mycelials. How did it begin? Kalinda projected images of misunderstanding, of fear escalating into aggression. The scourge created resource scarcity. Both our species, expanding, desperate, saw each other as threats. Small skirmishes turned into battles, battles into war. Language barriers, cultural differences, they became weapons. Your federation, in my time, is a very different entity. And my people, we became hardened, militant. Her filaments drooped. I came back to prevent the catalyst to the fall of the Ark. Its knowledge, its genetic diversity, could offer alternatives to conflict. Yates listened, his heart heavy. The idea of humanity, his humanity, embroiled in such a devastating, endless war was a chilling prospect. His work as a first contact specialist was predicated on the hope of understanding, of peaceful coexistence. Kalinda's future was a negation of that hope. There has to be a way to change it, Kalinda. More than just saving the Ark. That is my hope. She projected, her gaze meeting his. Perhaps this unexpected union is a part of that change. Their conversations grew deeper, more personal. Kalinda learned of Yates's solitary childhood, his academic pursuits that distanced him from easy companionship, his one past relationship that had ended due to his inability to truly open up. He was, she realized, as much a keeper of his own carefully guarded internal archive as she was of her species. Yates, in turn, became fascinated by the nuances of her mycelial biology. He learned that her skin's temperature changes were not just emotional indicators, but also a form of thermoregulation and energy dissipation, crucial when she used her psionic abilities. Her filaments were not just sensory organs, they could also emit focused sonic pulses, create minute electromagnetic fields, and, as he had experienced, interface directly with other neural networks. The mimic organism continued to evolve. It had repaired the hull damage from the asteroid encounter, extruding metallic tendrils that patched breaches with a material identical to the Nomad's original plating, only stronger. It started anticipating their needs, subtly optimizing power distribution, even filtering the recycled air more efficiently. Yet, there was an unsettling aspect to its growth. It began to create small, intricate patterns on the console, patterns that echoed mycelial script Kalinda had shown Yates from the archives. It's learning from you too. Yates observed a hint of unease in his voice. From your thoughts, your memories. It is a mimic, Kalinda affirmed. It reflects what it encounters. We must be mindful of what we expose it to. Romantic tension, an unspoken current, began to flow between them. It was in the shared glances across the cramped cockpit, the accidental brush of his hand against her cool, metallic arm, the way her filaments would sometimes drift towards him, as if drawn by an unseen force. The taboo they had broken, the profound intimacy of their mind meld, had created a unique space where the normal barriers between human and alien, man and woman, seemed to dissolve. They were two souls adrift, bound by shared danger and a destiny neither had chosen but both were now embracing. His innate curiosity was now fully directed at her, not just as an alien, but as Kalinda. Her strength, her vulnerability, her quiet determination, they were drawing him in, challenging his emotionally guarded nature at its very core. He was beginning to feel something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a very long time, a connection that was both terrifying and exhilarating. The scourge was relentless. After a week of relative peace, navigating through a dense, iron-rich nebula that Kalinda hoped would mask their trail, it found them again. Not just a scout this time, but a significant tendril of the main swarm, a glittering cloud of malevolent silver dust that blotted out the stars. Alarms screamed through the Nomad. It's adapted to the nebula's interference, Yates said, his knuckles white on the controls. They're boxing us in. Kalinda's filaments were rigid, glowing with a fierce, defensive light. The mimic organism, she projected, her mental voice urgent. It has been analyzing the Scourge's patterns from the data we collected during the Icarus escape. It might be able to generate a counter-frequency. A temporary disruption, might be. Yates shot back, evasively maneuvering the Nomad through a hail of tiny, corrosive nanite projectiles that pinged off their enhanced shields. Its processing power is still limited. A full disruption wave is beyond its capacity. But perhaps a focused burst, enough to create an opening. They worked in frantic synchronicity. Kalinda, her mind linked with the mimic organism, guided its attempts to replicate and then invert the Scourge's intricate communication frequencies. Yates, drawing on every ounce of his piloting skill, dodged and weaved, buying them precious seconds. The nanite cloud pressed closer, its collective intelligence palpable, a cold, hungry sentience. Now, Kalinda urged. The mimic organism pulsed, and a wave of discordant energy erupted from the Nomad. For a moment, the attacking nanites faltered, their cohesive swarm patterns dissolving into chaos. An opening appeared in the silver wall. Yates slammed the thrusters, propelling the Nomad through the gap. They escaped, but not unscathed. The ship's port stabilizer was damaged, and their main communications array was fried. Worse, Kalinda had expended a tremendous amount of energy guiding the mimic organism. Her skin was dull, its temperature dropping alarmingly. She slumped in her seat, her filaments drooping. "Kalinda!" Yates unstrapped himself, rushing to her side. Her breathing was shallow. "You need minerals. Your reserves," depleted. She managed, her mental voice faint. The effort was too much. Panic seized Yates. They were deep in uncharted territory, no friendly ports nearby. He scanned the ship's limited geological database, cross-referencing it with the information Kalinda had shared about her needs. There was nothing suitable within range, nothing that could provide the intense, specific energy she required. There must be something, he muttered, desperately searching. Then he remembered. The Ark, the Genesis core. Kalinda had said it was a source of immense biological power, the very thing the Scourge sought. The Ark, he said aloud. "Kalinda, if we can get to the Ark, could its energies sustain you, help you?" A flicker of light in her eyes. "Perhaps. The energies there are foundational, pure life force. But it is also the heart of the danger. It's our only chance," Yates said, his gaze determined. "For you. And for the galaxy." He plotted a direct course, a dangerous, desperate gamble. The journey towards the Seed Vault Ark pushed them to their limits. With the stabilizer damaged, the Nomad flew erratically. Yates' jury rigged repairs using salvage parts, and the mimic organism's unsettlingly adaptive abilities, it extruded a pseudopod that solidified into a temporary, crystalline brace for the stabilizer, glowing with faint internal energy. During this perilous flight, their connection deepened. Yates found himself caring for Kalinda, tending to her weakened state. He would find the warmest parts of the ship for her, regulate the internal temperature, to try and match her body's fluctuating needs. He shared his own meager rations, though he knew they offered her little sustenance. These small acts of care spoke volumes. One cycle, as Kalinda drifted in a weak, semi-conscious state, her filaments brushed his hand as he checked her temperature. It wasn't an accident. The touch was light, a whisper of sensation, yet it sent a jolt through Yates. He didn't pull away. He gently closed his fingers around her cool metallic ones. Her filaments seemed to respond, coiling slightly around his hand, a faint warmth spreading from her skin. When she regained some strength, they talked. Not just about the mission, but about themselves. Yates, shedding his emotional armor piece by piece, spoke of his dreams of peaceful first contact, the frustrations of bureaucratic interference, the quiet ache of his solitude. Kalinda, in turn, shared more of the mycelial perspective on life, on connection, on the great weave of consciousness her people believed bound the universe. "This bond we share." She projected one quiet shift, her gaze on their intertwined hands. "The mind meld it is called sinecor in my tongue. The weaving of souls. It is the most profound connection two mycelials can experience, to share it with another." She trailed off, the unspoken weight of the broken taboos still present, but now tinged with something else, wonder, perhaps even acceptance. "For humans," Yates said softly, "we don't have anything quite like it. But what I feel, it's new. And powerful." He looked into her obsidian eyes, no longer seeing just an alien, but the remarkable individual she was. Kalinda, I. Before he could articulate the burgeoning emotions, a proximity alert cut through the quiet. A derelict vessel, drifting aimlessly. Sensors indicated faint life signs and, more importantly, traces of the specific minerals Kalinda desperately needed. It was a trap. As they cautiously approached the derelict, a section of its hull detached, revealing a hidden nanite emitter. A concentrated stream of gray goo shot towards the Nomad. Evasive. Yates yelled, but it was too late. The nanite struck, not with corrosive force, but with an insidious, disabling energy. The Nomad's systems flickered and died. They were adrift, powerless, a sitting duck. Kalinda, though weak, reacted instantly. Her filaments blazed with light. The mimic organism, she urged. It can absorb the energy, reroute it. Yates, working by the dim emergency lights, helped her guide the mimic organism. It flowed across the dead control panels, its surface rippling. It extended tendrils towards the point of impact, absorbing the nanite energy, its own core beginning to glow with an intense, captured power. The ship's system sputtered back to life, but the encounter had taken its toll. Kalinda collapsed, her light dimming critically. No, Yates whispered, cradling her. Her skin was cold, her filaments limp. He had to do something. The derelict ship, its trap sprung, was now slowly advancing, desperate. He remembered the small, translucent crystal Kalinda had given him, the one that clarified perceptions. He still had it. He also remembered the images of Mycelials sharing energy, of their filaments intertwining. A wild, desperate idea formed. If the mind meld was a sharing of consciousness, perhaps he held Kalinda close. He focused all his will, all his burgeoning feelings for her, channeling them, trying to reach her through the bond they had forged. He pressed the perception crystal to her lips. Then, taking a leap of faith that transcended logic, he touched his forehead to hers, trying to recreate the closeness of their scenecore. Kalinda, he whispered, stay with me. Fight. Take what you need from me. A faint spark. Her filaments twitched. He felt a minute drain, not of physical energy, but of something. His focus, his will, his emotional intensity. And then, a response. A trickle of warmth from her skin. A faint pulse from her filaments as they brushed his temples. He wasn't a mycelial. He didn't have their innate abilities. But their bond, the sinocore, the broken taboo that had isolated them, it was now a conduit. He was giving her something, a spark of his own life force, amplified by his fierce desire for her to live. Slowly, agonizingly, a touch of iridescence returned to her skin. Her breathing deepened. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on him. The raw emotion in her gaze, the gratitude, the dawning understanding of what he had just done was staggering. Yet her mental voice was a whisper but clear. You shared your essence? I couldn't lose you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. In that moment, surrounded by dying ship systems and the looming threat of the Scourge, something shifted irrevocably. The shared danger, the sacrifice, the desperate act of giving, it had forged more than just an alliance. It had forged love. He leaned down, and his lips met her cool, metallic ones. The kiss was hesitant at first, then deepened, a fusion of human warmth and alien coolness, a testament to their unexpected, impossible union. Her filaments wrapped around his arm, their light now soft, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat, which he could now faintly feel against his chest. The mimic organism, having absorbed and processed the nanite energy, suddenly pulsed brightly. The Nomad's engines roared back to full power, stronger than before. It had not just repaired, but upgraded. Eddie had learned from the Scourge's disabling tech. Kalinda projected, her strength slowly returning, her hand covering his on her arm. And from us, they broke away from the derelict, leaving it behind. The immediate crisis had passed, but the stakes had never been higher. They were heading towards the Seed Vault Ark, the Scourge's ultimate target, and now, they were doing so not just as partners, but as two beings deeply, irrevocably in love, fighting for a future they desperately wanted to share. The universe might be vast and indifferent, but in the cramped cockpit of the Nomad, a new, fierce light had been kindled. Their journey to the Seed Vault Ark, known in ancient texts as Cygnus X1 Reliquary, was a tense race against time and the ever-adapting Silken Scourge. Kalinda, slowly recovering her strength, thanks to Yates's desperate act of shared essence, and the residual energies from the mimic organism's absorption of the Nanite attack, used her archival knowledge to navigate cryptic star charts and bypass celestial hazards. The information she carried was not just historical. It contained forgotten stellar cartography, pathways through folded space known only to the earliest starfaring races, including her own. The Ark isn't just a vault of genetic material. Kalinda explained, her mental voice stronger now, resonating with a quiet urgency in Yates's mind. They sat side by side, the vast, star-dusted void their constant companion. It's a living library, but also a beacon. Its Genesis core emits a unique bioenergetic signature. That's what the Scourge is homing in on. It's the ultimate source of new life, not just for individual organisms, but for entire ecosystems, potentially entire worlds. Yates nodded, his gaze fixed on the navigational display, which now shimmered with complex mycelial glyphs, courtesy of the mimic organism's integration with Kalinda's knowledge. If the Scourge consumes the core, it gains an unlimited template for replication. For evolution, it becomes truly unstoppable. Precisely, Kalinda affirmed. And in my original timeline, its fall heralded an age of galactic decay. The loss of that repository of life of potential renewal broke something fundamental in the cosmic balance. Species turned on each other for dwindling resources. The war it became inevitable. Her words painted a grim picture, but Yates found a new resolve solidifying within him. His love for Kalinda, this fierce, unexpected emotion, had transformed his academic curiosity into a burning imperative. He wasn't just fighting to save a repository or prevent a theoretical future war. He was fighting for her, for the chance of a future with her. The mimic organism had become an indispensable, if unnerving, third member of their crew. It had not only repaired the Nomad but continued to subtly enhance it. Its surface, once a simple sphere, now flowed and reformed, sometimes extruding small, delicate antennae that tasted the stellar winds, sometimes forming crystalline lenses that focused light from distant galaxies, feeding data directly into the ship's revitalized sensor arrays. It even began to produce soft, resonant tones, almost like a simplified form of mycelial speech, responding to Kalinda's presence and, occasionally, to Yates's voice. It's developing a rudimentary consciousness, isn't it? Yates observed one cycle, watching as a filament from Kalinda's hair gently touched the organism, which responded with a ripple of light. It reflects. It learns. It seeks patterns, harmony. Kalinda projected. My people believe that all matter has a nascent consciousness. The mimic organism is simply more receptive. Their strategic discussions now revolved around how to approach the Ark, how to defend it, or, if necessary, how to neutralize the Scourge before it could assimilate the Genesis core. Kalinda's archival knowledge provided schematics of the Ark's ancient defense systems, though many were likely dormant or decayed after millennia. The Ark was built by a coalition of species, long vanished. Kalinda shared projecting images of beings of light, crystalline entities, and colossal, spacefaring flora. Their technology was based on bioenergetics and resonance. Conventional weaponry would be ineffective, perhaps even detrimental to the Ark's delicate structures. So, brute force is out, Yates mused. We need a more elegant solution. His xenolinguist mind, trained to find patterns and meaning in the unknown, began to churn. If the Scourge operates as a collective, a hive mind, could we disrupt its cohesion, like you did with the scout ship but on a larger scale? The mimic organism could be key. Kalinda agreed. What? If we can get it close enough to the Scourge's primary concentration, and if it has absorbed enough diverse energy signatures and command structures, it might be able to generate a nullification wave. But it would need a massive power source, and the risk of it being overwhelmed and assimilated by the Scourge is significant. As they neared the Ark's coordinates, the Scourge's presence became more pronounced. Fleets of nanites, larger and more organized than any they had encountered before, patrolled the surrounding space. They were forced into a series of harrowing evasive maneuvers, relying on Kalinda's precognitive flashes, a side effect of her temporal displacement, amplified by her connection to Yates and the Nomad's enhanced agility. During one particularly close encounter, a nanite swarm nearly cornered them against a collapsing protostar. Yates executed a desperate maneuver, slingshotting the Nomad around the star's gravity well, the ship groaning under the strain. Kalinda, her hand gripping his arm, her filaments blazing, projected a shield of focused pionic energy around the cockpit, deflecting a wave of corrosive particles. They emerged, battered but intact, the experience forging their reliance on each other even tighter. That evening in the quiet aftermath, with the angry red glow of the protostar receding behind them, The emotional dam within Yates finally broke completely. He turned to Kalinda, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the nebulae outside their viewport. "Kalinda," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "What we are, what we've become to each other, it's more than just survival. More than an alliance." He took her metallic hand, its coolness a familiar comfort now. "The thought of losing you, it's unbearable. I know the odds are against us. I know your mission, your past, your future, it's all so complex. But whatever happens at the Ark, I want you to know," he swallowed, his carefully constructed emotional walls crumbling to dust. "I love you, Kalinda Fornax. Across all of time and space, I love you." Kalinda's obsidian eyes seemed to drink him in. Her iridescent skin glowed with a soft, warm rose gold light. Her filaments drifted towards him, gently caressing his cheek. Her mental voice filled his mind, warm and resonant, imbued with an emotion that transcended language. "Yates Quantum, my unexpected star. The Cinecore showed me your soul, but my heart chose you on its own. In my desolate future, love was a forgotten echo. You have taught me its song again. I love you." Their kiss this time was not born of desperation, but of profound, acknowledged love. It was a promise, a vow made against the backdrop of impending galactic catastrophe. Her skin warmed beneath his touch, her filaments weaving a gentle pattern against his neck, sending shivers of shared sensation through him. It was an intimacy that was uniquely theirs, a blend of human passion and mycelial connection, a testament to their unexpected union. Their arrival at the Cygnus X1 reliquary was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The Ark was colossal, a Dyson sphere woven from organic-looking, crystalline structures that pulsed with a faint, internal light, surrounding a stable, blue giant star. It was a masterpiece of ancient bioengineering, a testament to a forgotten age of galactic cooperation. But its beauty was marred. Vast swaths of its surface were already encrusted with the telltale silver of the Silken Scourge. The Nanites were actively consuming the Ark's outer layers, tendrils of the goo probing deeper, like metallic vines seeking the heart of a dying flower. "We're too late to prevent their arrival," Yates said grimly. "But perhaps not too late to stop them from reaching the Genesis core." Kalinda's filaments were taut, her entire being focused. The core is located at the heart of the Ark, shielded by multiple layers of bioenergetic fields and ancient guardians. But the Scourge is relentless. It learns, it adapts, it consumes. Their plan was desperate. They would use the Nomad, enhanced by the mimic organism, to create a diversion, drawing the bulk of the Scourge's attention. While the Nanites were engaged, Kalinda, using her knowledge of the Ark's internal pathways and her psionic abilities, would attempt to reach the control center for the Ark's primary defense systems. If she could reactivate them, they might stand a chance. Yates would accompany her, his problem-solving skills and linguistic talents essential for interfacing with ancient, alien technology. The mimic organism, if Kalinda could not reactivate the defenses, was their last resort, a potential kamikaze, run to disrupt the Scourge at its most concentrated point, hopefully near the Genesis core. "This is it," Yates said, his hand finding Kalinda's. Their fingers intertwined, a silent reassurance. "For love," Kalinda projected, her voice a beacon of resolve in his mind, "and for a new life." The Nomad, its form subtly shifting as the mimic organism optimized it for the coming battle, plunged towards the besieged Ark. The final confrontation was about to begin. The Nomad, now less a survey scout and more a sleek, agile interceptor thanks to the mimic organism's continuous adaptations, sliced through the outer defensive perimeter of the Scourge. Yates piloted with a grim determination, his every sense amplified by the lingering effects of the perception crystal and the deep mental link he shared with Kalinda. Beside him, Kalinda was a beacon of focused energy, her filaments glowing intensely, her mind already sifting through the Ark's ancient schematics, searching for their entry point. "The main Scourge concentration is at the northern pole, where they've breached the primary energy conduits," she projected, her mental voice cutting through the rising chaos. "One need to infiltrate via a dormant maintenance channel on the equatorial band. It will be less defended, but the pathways are treacherous." The surface of the Ark was a battlefield. Remnants of its automated defenses, crystalline turrets, firing beams of pure energy, massive antibody-like constructs fought a losing battle against the inexhaustible tide of nanites. Explosions blossomed silently in the vacuum, flashes of light against the Scourge's encroaching silver. Yates expertly navigated the Nomad through the debris and crossfire, The mimic organism enhanced engines responding with uncanny precision. "Found the access tunnel," he declared, guiding the ship towards a barely visible fissure in the Ark's crystalline hide, a section momentarily clear of nanite activity. They docked the Nomad within the narrow tunnel, the ship's form contracting slightly to fit. The mimic organism extruded an airtight seal around the hatch. "The organism will defend the Nomad," Kalinda said. "It understands its role." The entity on the console pulsed a steady, affirmative light. Stepping out into the Ark's interior was like entering the heart of a dying leviathan. The air was thin, cool, humming with ancient energies. Passageways of glowing crystal branched off in every direction, some pulsating with faint life, others dark and fractured, already succumbing to the Scourge's corruption. Small, skittering nanite scouts were everywhere, testing, probing. The control center for the planetary shield systems is 3 levels down, near the primary biolumina conduits. Kalinda guided, her filaments acting as a multi-sensory detection array, picking up faint energy trails and structural weaknesses. Their progress was slow, fraught with peril. They bypassed Scourge patrols, solved intricate environmental puzzles, left by the Ark's builders pressure plates that responded to specific biosignatures, light-based locks that required precise frequency modulation. Yates's xeno-linguistic skills were crucial in deciphering alien glyphs on control panels, while Kalinda's psionic abilities allowed her to sense and sometimes even manipulate the Ark's dormant systems. During one encounter, a larger Scourge construct, a multi-limbed horror of assimilated Ark technology and raw nanites blocked their path. Kalinda unleashed a focused psionic blast, staggering it, while Yates, spotting a vulnerable power conduit exposed during its momentary disorientation, fired his sidearm, a standard Federation energy pistol, with pinpoint accuracy, severing the conduit and causing the construct to collapse in a shower of inert silver dust. "Your aim has improved," Kalinda remarked, a hint of approval in her mental voice. "Motivation," Yates replied, his eyes finding hers, a silent acknowledgement of the stakes. They reached what Kalinda identified as the antechamber to the shield control nexus. The chamber was vast, dominated by a colossal, inert crystal that hummed with dormant power. But the Scourge was already here. Tendrils of nanites were crawling over the crystal, attempting to siphon its energy, to corrupt its core programming. "We have to stop them." Kalinda surged forward, her hands glowing. She projected beams of disruptive psionic energy at the encroaching nanites, forcing them back, but more kept coming. Yates scanned the chamber. "The activation sequence. Kalinda, can you interface with the primary crystal?" "I can try," she replied, her concentration absolute. "But it will require all my focus. You must protect me." Yates nodded grimly. He drew his pistol, positioning himself between Kalinda and the advancing Scourge. Nanite warriors, larger and more formidable than the scouts, began to pour into the chamber. He opened fire, picking them off one by one, but their numbers were overwhelming. Kalinda placed her hands on the great crystal. Her filaments spread across its surface, weaving into its intricate structure. Her body became a conduit, channeling her life energy, her archival knowledge, her very essence into the dormant machine. The crystal began to glow, first faintly, then with increasing intensity. Ancient symbols flared to life on its facets. A massive Scourge brute, a towering amalgamation of metal and stolen energy, smashed through a wall, its multifaceted eyes fixing on Kalinda. Yates emptied his pistol into it, the energy blast scorching its surface but failing to stop its advance. He was out of ammo. The brute swatted him aside like an insect, sending him crashing into a far wall. Dazed, his vision blurring, Yates saw the brute raise a massive appendage to strike Kalinda. "No!" he roared, pushing himself up, pain lancing through his ribs. But before the blow could land, a blinding blue light erupted from the crystal. Kalinda screamed, a sound that was both agony and triumph, a sound that echoed in Yates's very soul. The Ark shuddered. A wave of pure, golden energy pulsed outwards from the crystal, vaporizing the Scourge brute, and every nanite in the chamber. Yates scrambled to Kalinda's side. She was slumped against the crystal, her skin pale, her filaments dim. But she was alive. "The shields," she whispered, her physical voice raspy. "They're online." Throughout the Ark, massive energy shields, dormant for millennia, flared to life, pushing back the Scourge, severing its tendrils, cleansing vast sections of the Ark's surface. But the fight was not over. The Scourge, though damaged, was regrouping, focusing its remaining forces for an assault on the Ark's heart, the Genesis core. "We bought time," Yates said, helping Kalinda to her feet. But they'll go straight for the core now. And we still have the mimic organism. Kalinda nodded, leaning on him for support. The Genesis core chamber has its own final defenses. But the Scourge will have learned from this. It will adapt. Their path to the Genesis core was a desperate race. The reactivated shields had cleared many pathways, but pockets of Scourge resistance remained, fighting with renewed ferocity. Kalinda, though weakened, used her connection to the Ark systems to guide them, while Yates fought with a newfound ferocity, his love for her fueling his every action. They finally reached the entrance to the Genesis core chamber, a colossal, iris-like portal, sealed tight. As they approached, the portal shimmered and opened, revealing not a technological marvel, but a breathtaking natural cavern, vast and filled with luminescent flora, at its center a pulsating sphere of pure, white light, the Genesis core. It radiated an almost unbearable life energy, but the Scourge was already seeping in, bypassing the main portal through smaller fissures, its silver tendrils reaching hungrily for the core. "This is where it ends," Kalinda said, her voice regaining some of its strength. She looked at Yates, her eyes filled with love and sorrow. "The mimic organism. It's our last chance to destroy the Scourge's central consciousness here, before it fully assimilates the core." Yates knew what this meant. The mimic organism, now linked to the Nomad, would have to be brought into the chamber, close to the core and the densest concentration of the Scourge. It would be a suicide mission for the nascent intelligence they had come to rely on. "I'll pilot the Nomad," Yates said firmly. "You need to stay here, Kalinda. Use your connection to the Ark. Guide me, protect the core as best you can." Yates, "No. There's no time to argue," he said, kissing her fiercely. "I brought us this far. I'll see it through." He tapped his comm. "Nomad, prepare for direct insertion. Target Genesis core chamber." The mimic organism pulsed an affirmative on the Nomad's console, its resonant tones echoing faintly in Yates's mind. He raced back to the ship, Kalinda's anguished mental cry following him. Piloting the Nomad through the Ark's final, besieged corridors was hell. The Scourge threw everything it had at him. But the mimic organism, as if sensing the finality of its purpose, performed miracles, its surface rippling, extruding temporary shields, firing bursts of disruptive energy learned from its encounters with the Scourge. He burst into the Genesis core chamber, just as a massive pseudopod of the Scourge was about to engulf the core. Kalinda was there, a small, defiant figure, her psionic shield barely holding against the immense pressure. "Now, my friend," Yates whispered to the mimic organism. "Show them what you've learned." He aimed the Nomad directly at the heart of the Scourge mass enveloping the Genesis core. The mimic organism began to glow with an almost unbearable intensity. All the energies it had absorbed, all the patterns it had learned, focused into one final, desperate act. It began to replicate the Scourge's own resonant frequency, then inverted it, amplifying it 1,000-fold. The Nomad plunged into the silver mass. For a moment there was silence. Then, a soundless detonation of light and energy. A wave of pure, chaotic, disruptive resonance tore through the Scourge. The Nanites shuddered, their cohesion breaking, their collective intelligence shattering into a billion inert particles. The silver tide receded from the Genesis core, dissolving into harmless dust. The Nomad was gone. Silence descended upon the Genesis core chamber, broken only by the soft hum of the core itself and Kalinda's ragged breathing. The Scourge was annihilated. The Ark was saved. But Yates... Kalinda sank to her knees, tears, actual liquid tears tracing paths down her metallic cheeks. A sob tore through her, and then a flicker of movement near the Genesis core. A small, battered escape pod, ejected at the last possible second, its hull scorched and dented. The hatch hissed open, and Yates stumbled out bruised, battered, but alive. "Couldn't miss the after-party," he gasped, a weak grin on his face, before collapsing. Kalinda was at his side in an instant, her heart, a concept she was still learning to fully embrace, soaring with a relief so profound it was physically painful. The battle was won. The immediate aftermath was a blur of exhaustion and aching relief. Kalinda, her strength partially restored by the ambient energies of the Genesis core, tended to Yates's injuries. He was severely bruised, with a few cracked ribs and minor burns, but miraculously, nothing life-threatening. The escape pod, a last-minute improvisation by the mimic organism using its own substance and parts of the Nomad, had saved him. The organism itself, however, was gone, its sacrifice absolute. A profound sense of loss mingled with their victory. As Yates slowly regained consciousness, His first sight was Kalinda's face, her iridescent skin glowing softly in the light of the Genesis core, her obsidian eyes filled with an overwhelming tenderness. "You magnificent, reckless fool," she projected, her mental voice thick with emotion, as she gently touched his cheek. "Had to make sure you didn't get all the credit." He rasped, managing a weak smile. He reached up, his fingers tracing the elegant curve of her jaw. "We did it, Kalinda. We actually did it." Their reunion was quiet, profound. No words were needed to express the depth of their relief, their love. They had faced annihilation together and emerged, scarred but whole, their bond forged in the crucible of shared sacrifice, now unbreakable. The taboo they had broken, the Sinecor, felt less like a transgression and more like the foundation of their improbable miracle. News of the Scourge's defeat, or rather its sudden, inexplicable cessation, began to ripple outwards from the Ark. The reactivated shields, now under Kalinda's intuitive guidance through her connection with the Ark's ancient systems, pulsed with a steady, protective rhythm. The Ark itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, its internal bioluminescence growing stronger, healthier. Kalinda, drawing on the archival knowledge, now fully accessible to her and amplified by the Ark's energies, began the slow process of healing the great spaceborne sanctuary. She initiated repair sequences for damaged sectors, guided the Ark's remaining automated systems to cleanse the last vestiges of Nanite infection, and began to access the deeper layers of the Genesis core. It was here that the true meaning of the ancient balance of power restored began to reveal itself. The Genesis core was not just a repository of genetic data, it was a wellspring of cosmic life force, capable of seeding barren worlds, of rejuvenating dying ecosystems, of reintroducing lost knowledge and species that could restore ecological and even societal balance to a galaxy teetering on the edge of chaos. The Scourge had sought to corrupt this power for its own endless replication. Kalinda, with Yates by her side, would now wield it for renewal. The Ark can be more than just a memory. Kalinda explained to Yates, as they stood before the pulsating Genesis core days later. The immediate crisis abated. It can be a new beginning. It holds the keys to restoring worlds ravaged by the Scourge, and perhaps to averting the future war I came to prevent. By sharing its gifts, by fostering interdependence instead of conflict, Yates understood a new balance. Not imposed but grown. He looked at her, his admiration boundless. "You were always more than just a living library, Kalinda. You're a weaver of futures." Their actions had not gone unnoticed. A Federation long-range probe, drawn by the massive energy signatures, arrived in the vicinity of the Ark. Commander Rostova's skeptical face appeared on their makeshift communication screen, patched together by Kalinda from salvaged Ark technology. Her expression, however, was one of stunned disbelief and dawning respect as Kalinda and Yates recounted their story, the evidence of the defeated Scourge and the revitalized Ark undeniable. "Specialist Quantum, Kalinda Fornax," Rostova finally said, her voice tinged with awe. You've saved more than just a station. You may have saved the entire sector, perhaps more." The charges against Yates for his actions on Icarus Station were quietly, indefinitely suspended. An official commendation was already being drafted. Kalinda's people, the Mycelials, were a more complex matter. Her unauthorized time jump and her Sinecor with a human had marked her as an outcast. But news of the Scourge's defeat, an enemy that had plagued them for centuries, would undoubtedly reach them. The truth of her sacrifice, and the existence of the revitalized Ark under her stewardship, would challenge their rigid traditions, perhaps even force a re-evaluation of their xenophobic tendencies. In the quiet chambers of the Ark, Yates and Kalinda found solace and a deepening intimacy. The shared trauma and victory had stripped away all remaining pretenses. Their love, born amidst stellar chaos and alien wonders, was now their anchor. They were an unexpected union indeed, but one that felt as ancient and essential as the stars themselves. Their choice to trust, to love, to break taboos, had not only saved them but had set in motion ripples that could change the destiny of the galaxy. The power of the Ark was immense, but the power of their connection, Yates realized, was the true force that had turned the tide. Months later, the Cygnus X1 reliquary, now often referred to as the Fornax Quantum Ark, was a beacon of hope in a recovering sector of space. Under Kalinda's guidance, with Yates acting as her ambassador and trusted counsel, the Ark had begun its work of galactic restoration. Seeds of life, both literal and metaphorical, were being dispatched to worlds scarred by the Scourge or other conflicts. Ancient knowledge, carefully curated from the Genesis core, was being shared with species willing to learn new paths of cooperation and sustainable existence. Yates and Kalinda stood on an observation deck within the Ark, a vast transparent dome overlooking a newly cultivated internal biosphere, a riot of alien flora and fauna drawn from the Ark's genetic vaults, now thriving under the light of the central blue giant. Kalinda's iridescent skin shimmered with a calm, contented light, the deep starlight blue more prominent now, reflecting her peace. Her filaments, once taut with anxiety or bristling with defensive energy, now flowed softly around her shoulders, occasionally drifting to brush against Yates's arm. "It's working," Yates said softly, his arm around her. "The first reports from Kepler-26 life is taking root again. The atmospheric processors we seeded from the Ark's designs are stabilizing the climate." Kalinda leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture that was now as natural to her as breathing. The scourge was a symptom of imbalance, Yates, of fear of unchecked consumption. "The Ark offers a different path." Her mental voice was serene yet strong. "And the future I came from, it feels more distant now, like a fated nightmare." She had not seen definitive proof that her timeline had been averted, but the changes were undeniable. Tentative diplomatic overtures were being made between species that, in her future, were bitter enemies. The Federation, with Yates acting as an informal liaison, was showing a new openness to non-traditional alliances, inspired by the impossible success at the Ark. Her own people, the Mycelials, had sent a cautious delegation. They had not yet fully forgiven her breaking of taboo, but the evidence of her achievement, and the gentle wisdom she now embodied, had sound seeds of doubt in their rigid doctrines. Some younger Mycelials even spoke of the Senecor with Yates not as a defilement, but as a legend, a symbol of radical new possibilities. "Our unexpected union," Yates mused, echoing her earlier words, "seems to be having some unexpected consequences." Kalinda turned to him, her obsidian eyes luminous with love. She placed a hand on her abdomen, where the metallic skin seemed to pulse with an almost imperceptible, new rhythm. "And perhaps the most unexpected is yet to come." Yates's breath caught. He looked from her eyes to her hand, understanding dawning. A child. A true melding of their two species, a living testament to their love, a symbol of the new life they were fighting for, the ultimate new life, promised by their journey. His emotionally guarded heart, so long shielded, swelled with a joy so profound it brought tears to his eyes. "Kalinda," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, as he gently placed his hand over hers. He could feel it then, a faint, nascent energy, a tiny spark of shared existence. "The Genesis core is not just for worlds, my love," Kalinda projected, her mental voice a symphony of joy and tenderness. "It fosters all new beginnings." They stood together gazing out at the vibrant, teeming life within the Ark, and beyond it, at the star-dusted expanse of a galaxy slowly, painstakingly finding its way towards a new equilibrium. The ancient balance was being restored, not by reverting to an old order, but by embracing a future where differences were bridges, not barriers, and where love, in its most audacious and unexpected forms, could indeed span the stars and rewrite destinies. Their fight had been for love, and for new life, and in the quiet hum of the Ark, surrounded by the promise of 1,000 hopeful tomorrows, they knew they had won more than just a battle. They had seeded a galaxy with hope, beginning with the most precious new life of all, nestled safely within the heart of their extraordinary family. Across the stars, their unexpected union had not just endured, it had blossomed, a vibrant, defiant flower in the vast, fertile garden of the cosmos.